You've been lied to, not just by women about their past, but by a culture that taught you to judge people by their mistakes rather than their character. Every day, men discover uncomfortable truths about their partners' histories and react with anger, betrayal, and demands for explanations. But what if the real problem isn't their dishonesty, but your approach to understanding human nature? Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, would challenge everything you think you know about truth, relationships, and the dangerous game of demanding perfection from imperfect people. The ancient wisdom you're about to discover will transform how you navigate modern relationships and reveal why your current approach to truth-seeking might be destroying your chances at genuine connection. Prepare to question everything you thought you knew about love, honesty, and what it really means to know another person. Socrates revolutionized human thinking not by providing answers, but by asking the right questions. And when it comes to relationships, most men are asking the wrong questions entirely. Instead of demanding to know every detail about a woman's past, Socrates would challenge you to examine why you need this information. In the first place, are you seeking truth to build genuine connection, or are you driven by insecurity, possessiveness, or the need to control? The Socratic method teaches us that before we can judge anyone else's honesty, we must first interrogate our own motivations with ruthless precision. The philosopher understood that surface-level questioning reveals nothing about a person's true character or their capacity for growth. When you discover inconsistencies in someone's story, the Socratic approach isn't to immediately condemn them as liars, but to dig deeper into the underlying reasons. What fears or shame might drive someone to alter their narrative? What societal pressures create the need for deception? Socrates believed that all human behavior stems from either knowledge or ignorance. People lie not because they are inherently evil, but because they lack the wisdom to see better alternatives or fear the consequences of truth. The most powerful question Socrates would pose about relationships is this: are you more interested in being right or being wise? Most men want to catch women in lies to prove their own superiority or to justify their distrust. But this approach destroys any possibility of authentic connection. The Socratic method demands that you question your assumptions, examine your biases, and seek understanding rather than ammunition. When you approach relationships as a philosopher rather than a prosecutor, you create space for genuine honesty and transformation. And paradoxically, this makes people far more likely to tell you the truth voluntarily. Socrates carved know thyself into the foundation of Western philosophy because he understood that self-deception is humanity's greatest weakness. Before you point fingers at a woman's dishonesty about her past, examine your own relationship with truth. Have you ever embellished a story, omitted uncomfortable details, or presented yourself as better than you actually are? Most men who obsess over women's lies are running from their own unexamined insecurities. You demand honesty from others, while living in denial about your own motivations, fears, and past mistakes. The Socratic principle of self-knowledge reveals an uncomfortable truth. Your anger about deception often stems from your own shame. When you react with rage to discovering someone's hidden past, you're projecting your own fear of being discovered as imperfect. Socrates taught that wisdom begins with admitting ignorance. Yet most men enter relationships pretending to be completely secure and emotionally stable. This false presentation is itself a form of lying. You're deceiving potential partners about your own psychological reality. True Socratic wisdom demands that you become brutally honest about your own capacity for deception. Before judging others, have you ever told a woman what she wanted to hear, rather than your authentic thoughts? Have you hidden your own past relationships or experiences? The man who truly knows himself recognizes that everyone carries secrets, shame, and stories they wish they could rewrite. This recognition doesn't excuse dishonesty, but creates the foundation for mature relationships, built on mutual understanding rather than impossible standards. Socrates' famous allegory of the cave perfectly describes modern dating culture. Most people are chained to their phones, mistaking shadows on dating app screens for reality. Social media has created a world where everyone presents carefully curated versions of themselves, making authentic connection nearly impossible. You're not dating real people, but rather polished personas designed to attract attention and validation. The woman who lies about her past isn't necessarily malicious. She's trapped in the same cave as you, believing that her true self isn't worthy of love. Dating apps and social platforms reward deception by design. The most successful profiles are those that present idealized versions of reality. Women learn quickly that revealing their complete truth leads to rejection, so they craft narratives that fit societal expectations. Meanwhile, men consume these false images and develop unrealistic standards based on illusions. You're both prisoners in Plato's cave, mistaking artificial light for genuine illumination. Creating relationships built on foundations of mutual deception. The Socratic path to freedom requires you to turn away from these shadows and seek authentic human connection. This means having the courage to be genuinely vulnerable yourself and creating safe spaces where others can do the same. When you stop participating in the performance of perfection, you give others permission to drop their masks. The cave of modern dating only has power over those who refuse to acknowledge they're living in darkness. Once you recognize the illusion, you can begin the difficult but rewarding journey toward genuine relationships. Socrates became the wisest man in Athens by admitting he knew nothing. This principle transforms how you approach relationships and the discovery of hidden truths. When you catch someone in a lie about their past, your immediate reaction reveals whether you're operating from wisdom or ignorance. The ignorant man assumes he understands the complete picture and rushes to judgment. The wise man recognizes that human behavior is complex and admits he doesn't fully comprehend the motivations behind deception. This admission of ignorance becomes the foundation for genuine understanding. Most men enter relationships believing they can quickly assess a woman's character and history. This false confidence blinds them to the deeper truths about human nature. Socrates understood that the moment you think you know everything about someone, you stop learning and growing together. When faced with dishonesty, instead of proclaiming your superior moral position, ask yourself what you don't know about this person's experiences, fears, and reasons for hiding parts of their story. This intellectual humility opens doors to conversations that rigid judgment closes forever. The Socratic approach to relationship conflicts involves asking better questions rather than making accusations. Instead of demanding why someone lied, explore what circumstances made them feel that truth was dangerous. What experiences taught them that honesty leads to rejection or punishment? Your willingness to admit ignorance about their perspective creates space for authentic dialogue. This doesn't mean accepting dishonesty, but rather approaching it with the curiosity of a philosopher. Rather than the certainty of a judge, wisdom grows in this fertile ground of admitted unknowing. Socrates declared that the unexamined life is not worth living. Yet most people sleepwalk through their romantic relationships without ever questioning their patterns, motivations, or expectations. When you discover that someone has lied about their past, your reaction reveals how much self-examination you've actually done. The man who explodes with righteous anger hasn't examined why he needs his partner's history to validate his own worth. He's living an unexamined emotional life, reacting from unconscious programming rather than conscious choice. Both men and women avoid the difficult work of self-reflection because it forces them to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. Women who lie about their past often do so because they've never examined why they feel ashamed of their experiences or why they believe their authentic self is unworthy of love. Men who obsess over these lies haven't examined their own insecurities about comparison, control, or their fear of being seen as inadequate. This mutual avoidance of self-knowledge creates relationships built on shifting sand rather than solid foundations. The Socratic solution requires both partners to commit to ongoing self-examination and honest dialogue about what they discover. This means regularly questioning your assumptions, motivations, and emotional reactions rather than simply acting on them when someone lies to you. Before you react, examine what this triggers in you and why. What fears does their deception activate? What stories do you tell yourself about what this means? The examined life in love requires courage to face these internal truths. Only then can you build relationships based on authentic understanding. Socrates believed that truth was the highest virtue and the foundation of all meaningful human relationships. Without it, Connection becomes impossible because you're relating to illusions rather than reality. When someone lies about their past, they're not just withholding information, they're preventing you from knowing and loving their authentic self. This creates a relationship built on quicksand, where genuine intimacy becomes impossible because one person is performing a character rather than being themselves. Truth isn't just about facts, it's about the courage to be vulnerable and real. The Socratic understanding of truth goes beyond simple honesty to encompass the willingness to engage in difficult conversations about uncomfortable realities. Many people lie not because they're inherently deceptive, but because they fear rejection if their true self is revealed. This fear creates a cycle where deception breeds more deception, and relationships become elaborate performances rather than authentic connections. The person who lies about their past is often protecting themselves from judgment, but they're also robbing their partner of the opportunity to love them completely. Building trust through truth requires both partners to create an environment where honesty is safe and valued over comfort. This means responding to revelations with curiosity rather than condemnation, even when the truth is difficult to hear. Socrates taught that wisdom comes through dialogue and questioning. When your partner feels safe to be truthful, they're more likely to share their authentic experiences. The foundation of lasting relationships isn't perfection, but the mutual commitment to truth, growth, and the courage to be known completely by another person. Socrates exposed the paradox that those who claim to know the most often understand the least. This same paradox destroys modern relationships when men demand perfect pasts from imperfect people. Your insistence on finding someone without mistakes or secrets reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature and growth. The woman with number past worth hiding has likely lived no life worth examining. Experience creates wisdom, and wisdom often comes through making poor choices, learning from them, and becoming better. Your demand for perfection is actually a demand for inexperience disguised as moral standards. The Socratic examination reveals that your pursuit of someone with a flawless history stems from your own fear of inadequacy and comparison. You want to be the most significant person in their life, the best they've ever experienced, the one who matters most. This ego-driven need blinds you to the reality that depth comes from struggle, and character emerges from overcoming challenges. A person who has never faced temptation, made mistakes, or learned hard lessons has no real strength to offer a relationship when difficulties arise. Socrates would challenge you to examine whether you're seeking a partner or a trophy, someone to grow with or someone to make you feel superior. The paradox of perfection is that it's both impossible to find and undesirable to possess. Perfect people don't exist, and if they did, they would be insufferably boring. The woman who has lived, learned, struggled, and grown brings depth, empathy, and wisdom to relationships that pristine inexperience cannot match. Your job is to discern between someone who learned from their past and someone still repeating it. Socrates taught that virtue is the only true measure of human worth. Yet most men evaluate potential partners based on their past actions rather than their present character. The woman who lies about her history may be demonstrating poor judgment in that moment, but Socrates would ask you to examine her underlying virtues. Does she show courage in other areas of life, compassion toward others, wisdom in her current choices, and commitment to growth? A person's character is revealed not by their mistakes, but by how they respond to challenges. Treat people with less power and work to become better than they were. The Socratic approach to partner selection focuses on observable patterns of behavior rather than historical incidents. Virtue ethics examines whether someone consistently acts with integrity, kindness, and wisdom in their daily life. The woman who made poor choices 5 years ago but demonstrates growth, accountability, and consistent good judgment today may be a far better partner than someone with a clean past. But poor character. Socrates understood that virtue is developed through practice and reflection. The person actively working to improve themselves shows more promise than someone who has never been tested. Your evaluation of potential partners should center on their capacity for virtue, rather than their past failures. Does this person take responsibility for their actions, show empathy for others, demonstrate loyalty to friends, and exhibit the courage to do what's right even when it's difficult? These character traits predict future behavior far better than past mistakes. The Socratic man seeks a partner who shares his commitment to virtue and growth, rather than someone whose only qualification is an unblemished history. Virtue can be developed, but character flaws tend to persist. Socrates revolutionized human understanding through dialogue, not interrogation, not accusation, but genuine conversation aimed at discovering truth together. When you suspect someone of dishonesty about their past, your approach determines whether you'll uncover reality or drive them deeper into deception. The Socratic method involves asking open-ended questions that invite reflection rather than defensive responses, instead of demanding why they lied. You might explore what experiences shaped their perspective on sharing personal history. This creates space for authentic revelation rather than forced confession. True philosophical dialogue requires you to enter conversations without predetermined conclusions. About guilt or innocence, you're seeking understanding, not ammunition. For arguments, Socrates believed that through patient questioning and genuine curiosity, people would naturally reveal their true thoughts and motivations. When someone feels genuinely heard rather than judged, they're far more likely to share difficult truths voluntarily. This approach transforms potential conflicts into opportunities for deeper connection and mutual understanding. The art of Socratic dialogue in relationships means becoming genuinely curious about your partner's inner world, rather than simply collecting evidence to support your existing beliefs. Ask questions that help them examine their own motivations and fears. What made them feel that truth was dangerous? What experiences taught them to hide parts of themselves? What would help them feel safe being completely honest? This patient, philosophical approach often reveals that lies stem from fear rather than malice, and once you understand the fear, you can work together to create the safety that makes deception unnecessary. Socrates lived as a philosopher not just in theory but in practice. He examined every aspect of his existence with ruthless honesty and continuous questioning. Your relationships will only be as authentic as your commitment to philosophical living. This means regularly examining your motivations, assumptions, and reactions rather than simply acting on them when faced with deception or dishonesty. The philosophical man doesn't just react emotionally, but asks deeper questions about what the situation reveals about himself, his partner, and the nature of human relationships. The Socratic life requires you to become the primary investigator of your own consciousness. Why do certain behaviors trigger you? What fears drive your need for control? What insecurities make you demand perfection from others? The self-examination isn't navel-gazing, but practical wisdom that transforms how you navigate relationships. The man who knows himself deeply can respond to challenges from a place of strength and understanding rather than reactive emotion. He becomes a safe harbor for others to be authentic because he's not threatened by their imperfections. Becoming the philosopher of your own life means accepting that growth never ends, and that every relationship is an opportunity for deeper self-knowledge. When someone lies to you, instead of focusing solely on their dishonesty, examine what this teaches you about trust, vulnerability, and human nature. The philosophical approach to relationships transforms every challenge into wisdom, every conflict into understanding, and every disappointment into growth. This is how you build a life worth living and relationships worth having. Through the continuous pursuit of truth, wisdom, and authentic connection. The reality is that everyone carries secrets, shame, and stories they wish they could rewrite. The question is whether you'll approach these human imperfections with the wisdom of Socrates or the judgment of a fool. Are you ready to examine your own relationship with truth and become the kind of man who inspires honesty rather than demanding it? Subscribe to continue this philosophical journey toward authentic relationships and genuine self-knowledge.